I had questions from last month's formation meeting, and I do think this answer is going to take a little bit. So bear with me, and I apologize to all you people who aren't married, but it's good for us to know about marriage because you may have to help people. I mean, what I've been finding, and any of you have noticed, we published the talk we gave you last month on YouTube, and you can tell marriage is in a deplorable state with most Christians. I want to first make a note. If we do publish this on the computer, or for any of you that might be attending one of our meetings that aren't really a part of the Marian penitence of St. Francis, when we talk about these things about marriage, marriage is a very difficult thing because you're taking normally a broken man and a broken woman, and you're putting them into a relationship where they have to be Christ and his church and one flesh, and they're supposed to live in peace. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen a lot of the time, especially here in America, like what we dealt with, what we talked about last time is because of feminism and things like that. When some people have learned that feminism's a good thing, and so they think to understand feminism is the opposite of what God made a woman to be. Feminism is something that makes a woman a monster, whereas femininity makes a woman according to the design God had for her. And that's the whole point. Feminism seems like it's supposed to empower and ennoble a woman. What it does is it takes away her beauty and makes her a monster. It just basically tries to make her like a man. If everybody's a man, then where's the completion of humanity? So it doesn't make any sense. You got to have men and women to have humanity. So you need what's specifically feminine and you need specifically what's masculine to have humanity. If you don't have that, everything's a disaster. And so when you have women coming in with feminism, what they're doing is warring against the masculine because they're trying to take the place of the one who's masculine, that is the man. Now, just because the masculine might lack something, because some women out there, because they're affected by feminism, think, well, and this is very common. I hear this from a lot of families and a lot of women who really do intend well, but because they've been infected with this kind of stuff, don't really understand. So it takes a little bit to get this stuff out. It takes a great violence against the person. When I say violence, I don't mean physical violence. I'm talking about an individual fighting against himself to do what's right, a struggle internally. But what we realize in the fall of Adam and Eve, that women, as St. Paul says, it was the woman who was confused. It was not the man. That doesn't mean that men don't get confused. What it means is Eve didn't understand. Now, this is for the same reason why Paul is saying a woman is not to stand up in church and teach, because of the fact of she easily gets confused. She needs to go home and ask her husband at home. This isn't to slam a woman. This isn't to be disrespectful to a woman. It isn't to do any of those things. It's to understand the difference between men and women based on the fall that happened in the garden. That's it. So we need to get away from all of this fighting back and forth because you see it all over the internet. The comments that came in the last video we just put up, you could tell there's these young men just screaming. Just the fact that you would say that a man has a problem, you're just supposed to be screaming at the women. We have all these things. They won't clean. They won't this. They won't that. Friar, you need to talk to them. And then you hear the women. A lot of the women were very respectful. They were just like, thank you. And thank you for saying it charitably. But then others are like, it's not even right what you're saying. The men are this, the men are that. The whole problem's on the man. It isn't true. Neither one of those are true. What you have is the man's broken because of the fall, woman's broken because of the fall, and God gives us the ability through grace to heal that. And in marriage, that comes from all the donation, sacrifice, the working together, because it works off each other's edges. And now you have the complementary, you have the complement of humanity. You have a man and a woman united in holy matrimony. But unless you have that generosity to do that for God, you're just living a disaster. And that's where most people are. They're actually not willing to do it for God. They just want to sit and keep pointing the finger and blaming somebody else. Unfortunately, that even happens with some of our good people in the third order. But my first note is this. We are not talking about marriages that are gravely disordered. We're trying to talk to people who are striving in Christian perfection and have difficulties in marriage. And usually those difficulties come from inability to take responsibility on themselves or the inability to realize that what's necessary in marriage is that they do what's required of them by God for God. When you do that, you have peace in the family. At least you have peace, even though the other person, your spouse, isn't striving that way, or is a huge burden to you, or isn't doing all the things they should be doing. When it comes to judgment, that doesn't really matter what they were doing. It matters what you were doing. So our whole message is this: when we approach marriage, we approach it by way of, I look at myself and I see, how am I supposed to do what I promised to do for the rest of my life before God? Not, how am I supposed to do it because him, and she, and all the other stuff. If you're blaming somebody else, you are the problem. You have to get it through your thick skull. You are the problem. So now I understand there's other things. They've grown up watching abusive relationships. They've been abused themselves. There's all kinds of things that go in there. Even people who are on the road and striving for holiness have had to endure these horrible things. I don't know where you can get counseling at. I don't know where there's people that are, but I'm sure that they're out there. And if you look around, maybe you can get that. However, the grace of God in the union of holy matrimony is something that is of great value. And we don't always look to that. We look to the scientific now. Now, some of you might need it. You might need someone out there who has a better grip, a better understanding of how to deal with these things. And so we need to turn to those resources when they're actually really needed. And sometimes it might be a little bit more common today that they're needed. But in a lot of cases, what we're dealing with, at least with the Marian penitents, is you're dealing with, there tends to be a disconnect because you're still selfish, or you still don't understand, or you're not listening properly. It's coming down to you. It doesn't really have to do with your ability to please God, doesn't really depend on somebody else's inabilities. And that's where the big deficit is from what I can see in marriage. You signed on to marry that man. You signed on to marry that woman. You made a commitment for the rest of your life to sanctify yourself before God for that person, to help that person. You women did that to help that person. You men did that to provide for that person. So there's a lot of stuff that goes in that. So I want to move on because I don't want to spend the rest of the talk on this. But I want to read to you. But I had a question here. I think I had a question. One of the questions that came in me is this: does a wife owe obedience if she feels the husband hasn't treated her with proper dignity? This comes up a lot. And this is actually a big problem. You can phrase that question 100 different ways. I don't know if I can do it on the fly, but does a wife owe obedience if she doesn't feel or she doesn't think? Those are both subjective terms, and we have to be very careful with anything that's subjective. That the husband, let's not say hasn't treated her with proper dignity, isn't capable, isn't responsible. He's not a good leader. You can put anything in there. And a lot of you women, you've said these things, you think it like, but he can't, so I will. He can't do this, or he's not able to, or he's not thinking about, so I'm going to do. Now I want to kind of address that. Now I can understand from a woman's perspective, some women nowadays, they risk. It's nerve-wracking because they stay home, the husband provides, and sometimes the husband's not real capable of providing because it's difficult. It's a difficult world out there. They might have taken a business risk. They might have gotten fired from their job. Whatever it might be, that maybe they're pursuing something that doesn't. But you see, this man's trying. He's trying to do what he can do. He's not failing in his duties. It might be that the whole world's failing him, but he's trying. So that's part of that humility or humiliation that I talk about when we read chapter 2 of Ecclesiasticus. It's a humiliation to try and fail in front of everybody. So when we look at that, when do we have the right to jump in there and say, but he can't lead, but he doesn't understand, but he can't provide, but he doesn't treat me this way, but he doesn't. Because again, those are all subjective things. What I was talking about, so you can see with some of these families that the woman really risks a lot because she's saying, I'm going to take my part, which is, we've had children, there's a household to take care of. I'm going to stay, raise the children because someone has to do that. We don't want to, and you're going to provide. And so the wife sometimes is put into a very nervous situation. So the men need to really strive to understand there's that. But the women also have to understand that our Lord does promise to take care of us. So if you see that your husband really is trying to do what he's supposed to be doing, then you hang on for the ride, because we have to trust that our dear Lord is going to take care of his servants who are trying, because we're not all capable. We try, and we try in good faith. And it's a hard thing. I can only imagine when you're married and you're failing and everyone's looking at you, it just mounts up. But so anyways, you can see there's a mutual understanding. The wife feels nervous because she doesn't know if she's being provided for. The husband feels the anxiety because he wants to provide and he's having difficulty. Those two should be united in prayer, knowing that the wife is going to sacrifice herself to give her confidence and trust and help to the husband. And the husband is going to do what he can to try to provide for his wife. Now let's get back to it. How far does obedience go? And when is the wife allowed to disobey? When can she just say, but my feelings and my thoughts allow me to do this because you're not doing this? Well, it has to be a very grave situation. A wife does not have a subject. Now, we don't like using that with women. I mean, you have a very beautiful, intimate relationship between a man and a woman. But subject is the proper word. People don't like it because they've been raised in an effeminate culture that has to watch every word they say. But like we in the friary, St. Francis didn't like the word subject either. But if you have a superior, you have a subject. It's just the way it is. It doesn't mean that the religious superior goes and sits on a throne and everybody has to come in like kiss his feet whenever they come talk to him. That's not what it means. It means there's a hierarchy to society. You all know it when you go to work, and that's something I want to get to next. But you have a boss, and you have to treat the boss with a certain kind of respect, though this guy or this lady, they're just like I am, but they're the one in charge. So this one's got to tell me what to do. This one's got to organize the work. This one's got to determine how we take care of things. I got to report back to this person. But if I decide to just go do it myself, I don't trust my boss. So I'm going to go and I'm going to just buy these things for the office. And I'm going to start organizing things this way with everybody. Now, if you were to do that at the office, what would happen to you? It isn't going to go well. The boss is going to be like, I don't know what you just did. And I don't know where you had the gall to even think you could even do something like that. You're out of here. So same thing in the friary. Like if I had the friars come to me, because, they got to deal with me. You all might think I have it all together, but they know I don't. They live with me day in and day out. And so I forget stuff. I don't remember to take care of everything. They pile stuff up on my desk and it just sits there because I don't want to deal with it. I mean, I don't want to deal with it right now. I don't want to think about that right now. It's just going to sit there. So I'm going to do this other thing that's pressing. I'm not going to do that thing that's pressing. But if they just decide, well, that thing's been there for a while, Friar's not taking care of it, he doesn't really show that he's very capable of doing this, I'm going to hold a house meeting with everybody, and I'm just going to kind of talk to everybody, and we're just going to do it a different way. I'm going to go ahead and buy these books, or I'm going to take care of this thing, or I'm going to let everybody know we're doing it this way now. That friar's gone. You have somebody that does that, I'll talk to him, but he's probably going to be gone after that, because that's so utterly grave. You don't do that. And they all know it. You don't do that. You would never do that. You have a superior. He's in charge. So he might not be capable, but he's still in charge. So I got to go and be patient. Like, Friar, I put that thing on your desk. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at it. I didn't, and I'm going to get to it. I appreciate you letting me know. I will get to it. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a year goes by. Friar, I have that thing on your desk. But the point is this: where it comes down, you can see how that works in the marital state. It's not that your husband has to be capable. Now there can be a difference if If a husband's not able to provide completely for the family and things, sometimes the wife needs to go, especially if there aren't children there. Then there's a duty for both of them to provide for the family. Remember, the wife is not there just to be a princess. She's there to be a help to her husband. That's the whole purpose why God created a woman to begin with. So you have the complementarity in a man and a woman, and understanding in marriage, there's a contract that you both make in public that says he's gonna care for you, and you're going to help him, and you're going to work together in a society. But there's a proper order to that. There's so many things I don't know. Let me just go down and read this and give another analogy. Not analogy. I got this email from a woman, and now I am going to probably publish this, and I hope she doesn't mind it. I'm not going to say who she is or anything, but her example just summed it all up. And she sent this to me just to as like a contribution to say, here's my experience, and you're right. A woman, probably close around middle age, and so I was raised in a disordered home. I experienced violence, saw violence between my parents. Additionally, my mom spoke words of feminism often. Overall, I'm a poorly formed adult. All these factors expressed my disordered thinking when I was married at the age of 23. My first thought was, he's not going to dominate me and tell me what to do. You can only guess what you can guess very quickly. We were divorced. We had a small child. Being intelligent, I finished my degree and worked for a Fortune 100 security firm, carrying licenses easily, took care of my children financially. All of this was in line with my upbringing. However, this is the perspective I'd like to convey. When it was all said and done, I watched myself and my coworkers, who themselves were divorced and female for the same reason, readily submit to the company line, submit to superiors, submit to anything that was requested of us, as we knew our jobs were on the line, keeping in mind a person can work for some pretty awful human beings. Additionally, over the years, I was experiencing friendship with other women who absolutely refused to clean house for their husbands. Yet once they were divorced, they would clean for consideration of their roommate. You get the picture. Finally, I came to terms with the fact that there is nothing that my husband would have done to me that I didn't experience in another form through an employer. In fact, my husband probably would have been much nicer. Please don't get the idea that I had awful relationships with my employers. Overall, they believed I was happy. I hope this helps with another perspective of how our modern world has distorted the thinking and belief of young women. We are raised to believe we're supposed to go out and be successful. We're failures. I think we're failures if we don't. If I could go back in time, I would happily submit to my husband. Now, we find oftentimes when we talk to women who are divorced and oftentimes just living single life, they're calling religious, wanting to be submissive to them. They're calling somebody, they just want to be submissive. There's always this desire to be submissive to somebody. It's almost like, well, I don't know what to say to you. You know, that ship sailed. You had the proper environment for being submissive, and you didn't do it. Now, again, a lot of these people were raised in a culture that perverted their understanding of it, and we learn by hindsight. That's just the way it goes. Some of you are that way, but some of you married people can learn your lesson now and not wait until it's too late. Now, what do I mean by too late? I have all kinds of questions here. What do you do if your wife will not submit or obey? Because if that's the case, you can't have a genuine society there. You have to, if you have two people who just believe that they're both in charge. Neither one will listen to the other. Or you have the one who's not in charge, believing that the other one just simply has to submit and obey. And in marriage, that's the man just has to submit and obey the woman. There's nothing you can do. It's broken. The whole thing's broken. I don't know where you're supposed to go. I don't know how you're supposed to go forward. And this is unfortunate. I've been hearing about these kind of things. This is very sad. So any of you women who find yourself in this situation, you need to self-examine, because some women get locked onto a thought. We have this problem because of this one thing. If he would just change this, then everything would be fine. But then when you talk to the husband, it's like, I can't get this woman to do anything. And in fact, if I tell her too much, she'll just start beating on me. Now, when you mention this, some women will be, yeah, but what about when men beat on? We're not talking about that here. If you're in such a vile relationship, you need to just call the police. I don't know what you do when there's such domestic violence like that. No one should have to tolerate that kind of stuff. And I don't know how it all works today. I have a feeling that most people just aren't even protected when you call the police. I don't know. That's horrible. But the fact is, in better relationships where there isn't real strong, a woman striking her husband when the husband is not abusive in those ways, it's that woman needs to understand she has committed a crime that is so grave. What she's done is she's done that to Christ Jesus our Lord. And she mustn't think that she hasn't done that to Christ, because it all stems in the fourth commandment to obey your parents. Sounds weird, doesn't it? A wife has to obey her husband out of the fourth commandment. So you have to be very, very careful of these things, because the fourth commandment isn't just about parents. It's about obeying those people who are above you, and to strike the one that's above you. When St. Paul's very clear that this person represents Christ, you've done a very grave thing. Now, I know most of you don't have to deal with that, but the temptation's there, because remember, the final assault will be on the family. And I'm so utterly horrified at how thickly it has advanced within the Catholic traditional world. So we're praying for you. Just know that we friars are praying for you. And I know that our third order, a lot of you that have had peace in your families, I know that you've won it at a great cost. And it's wonderful, because there should be peace. We shouldn't have to live this way. There should be peace in our families. And again, if you think there isn't peace because of your husband, because of this, because of that, it's because you need to really reflect a little bit. Peace comes from, you go back and read Anna Marie Taigi. Her husband walked in. He didn't like what was served on the table. He threw it all on the floor. The whole family was there at table waiting. He came in, threw it all on the floor. She was standing there next to him, waiting she had already eaten. She was going to stand there to serve her husband. This lady's one of the holiest ladies I've ever heard of. She had a globe in front of her face that she could tell the future with, and the Pope would send cardinals every day to talk to her to find out what was going on in the world. So she's standing right there. He throws it all on the floor. And what did she do? Start beating on him, scream and yell, "This is all your fault. I don't have to submit to you." She went and cooked another dinner, and she walked over just as cheerful, served it to him, and said, "Will this work?" She won heaven with violence. Was it right that he threw all the food on the floor? No, but he has to answer to God for that. She doesn't. She has to answer for responding to Christ. Like, I don't know why I did that. I mean, maybe it wasn't a good meal. I'll just go make a different meal. Peace. She wanted to have peace in the home. That was an extreme example. I doubt that many of you, your husband's coming home, flipping over the dinner table and just saying, "I don't want that." Just cook the thing he wants, and if he doesn't like it, go cook him something else. This is the thing we have to do today. We have to donate and offer ourselves up. I'm going to read this to you from the moral book, so you don't think it's all just from Friar Anthony. I've read this before. This comes from this. It's a good book. It's a complete course based on Thomas Aquinas and best modern authors for morality. It's a good book. It's very complete. There's 2 volumes of this. I think they're good. When you have a big book with little writing in it, it's like little tiny font. It means there's a lot of information. So Christ is the head of the church. People get this confused. I saw some people leave comments like in the little section there on the last videos, like, so we have to treat our wife like Christ. It's like, well, you can, but I mean, that's not what the church says. It's not what St. Paul's talking about. He's giving you an example that the head of the family, head of the church is Christ, and the church is the body. And so Christ loves his body and sacrificed himself for it. And so the body reverences and submits to Christ. This is what's supposed to happen. So Christ is the head of the church. And so also the husband is superior to the wife in authority. Ordinarily, man excels in the qualities. Ordinarily, man excels in the qualities for the role of the home, such as physical strength, decision, courage. And hence, as every society, no matter how small, must have a head, the husband is the natural head of the home. But obedience is due a husband in domestic matters, in which he is the head of the house. So I have a whole bunch of questions here. Who determines what we eat? Who determines the finances? Who determines how we take care of the house? Who determines how we raise the kids? Who determines? The husband does. That's his job. He's the head of the house. He has the full authority to do those things. Now, it'll go on and explain. It does. I mean, let me just read. For example, the choice of the place of residence. He picks that. The management of the home, the family finances. He picks that. The discipline of the children. He picks that. But not the wife's personal affairs. That has to be understood. We've had people leave the third order because they felt like they had to be obedient. Well, you do have to be obedient, and I think you should work it out with your husband. You need to have a good, close relationship. You need to be talking about what's best. But if you have a husband that's not doing all of these things, you are permitted to do good and to move forward in a way of life that's going to assure you salvation. You still have a duty before God to do that. For example, her conscience is hers, and that's where God communicates to her. Husband does not have authority over her conscience. Her politics, her property, if she had her own properties before they got married, this kind of stuff, or what's that called? Inheritances and things like that. And only so there's a thing here, personal affairs, and only in commands that do not exceed his authority. What exceeds the husband's authority? Anything that's sinful. Now, that's not a subjective thing, but I think that Friar Anthony said that I don't have to obey you when things are sinful, and I think that's sinful. Now, it doesn't matter what you think. It either is or it isn't. I have to deal with this with the friars because St. Francis puts it in the rule. For our obedience, we have to obey everything. We have a very strict obedience, but we cannot obey something that's sinful. Never. How do you know? Like if you say, well, I think that's sinful. No, it doesn't matter. It either is sinful or it's not sinful. And if you don't know 100% that it is sinful, you have to obey. Because what it means is your conscience isn't formed. Now, if you have this thought that it just seems so grave that has to be sinful, you need to sort out your conscience. But because you're being commanded that by someone who doesn't normally ask you, I shouldn't say normally, like in the friary, I've never had a superior who's ever asked me to do anything sinful, ever. But I might have something in my head that says, well, that seems to me like that's not. Let me give an example. There was a friar in Italy. The laws are a bit different, or at least the conscience is different about plagiarism. They don't really care about that kind of stuff. Here in America, big deal. So a friar goes over there, American friar goes over. He gets told, I want you to take this book that we need for class, and I want you to copy it. Just copy the book, scan it, and print it out. I need 5 copies for friars. I can't do that. That's a sin. Do you know that's a sin? I don't know, but it seems to me that's a sin. What's a friar have to do? He's got to do it. He doesn't know if that's a sin. And in that case, that wasn't a sin. Making a copy of that book was not a sin. So his conscience was malformed. He did not have a right to disobey a superior because he thought that was a sin when it wasn't a sin. So when we know something's a sin, you can't obey any authority. No authority can be obeyed if they're asking us to do something that offends God. But we have to know that that's a sin. Exceeding authority. For he has no power to command if he's irrational. Now, that's not a subjective thing. I think you're being irrational. That's not what that means. What it means irrational is if he's intoxicated, then you don't have to. He's exceeding his authority. You don't have to obey when he's well. I mean, if he's asking you a normal thing to always ask you, yes, you have to obey it. But if he's exceeding his authority because he's irrational, that could happen from excessive anger, where we lose rationality. It could happen from intoxication or use of other kinds of illegal substances, stuff like that. And he has no claim to obedience if he orders something sinful or foolish. Foolish is not a subjective thing here. Everyone would think that's foolish. So if he asks you, no, I want you to go down into the public square and I want you to put a squash banana on your head and I want you to say over and over and over again some stupid thing, you don't have to obey that. You don't have to go do something that's just utterly foolish. That's not the kind of obedience we're talking about here. It has to do with things that deal with the domestic ongoings of the family and the family unit and the organization of the family. Moreover, since the wife is a partner and not a servant, and since she unusually excels in sympathy or sympathetic and wise advice and careful household manager, and is naturally more virtuous, it depends nowadays. You'll often find sometimes you have the wife's more virtuous, sometimes the man's more virtuous. Again, this was written quite a while ago, so it's not always the same thing. You can't go and just start beating your husband and say, I'm more virtuous and you're supposed to listen to me. It just doesn't work that way, okay? This is supposed to be giving you guidelines. You can't be using this. The husband should consult with her on important questions and decide them as far as possible by mutual consent. What that means is, even a good ruler, even me, like dealing with the friars, or you have even like a king of a country or something like that, he would always have his counselors. He didn't want to just go around barking orders. He wanted to know what's the best thing to do here. But did he have to do that? No. He could just bark orders. You don't like it, but he could just bark orders. And imprudence, all that doesn't mean I don't have to. He can be imprudent. I can do something that's imprudent. It's not sinful. I don't think that's a good idea. It doesn't matter what you think. I mean, he's in charge. You're not in charge. Same thing with the friars. We're going to go take this walk. It's going to go, but for Friar, that might exhaust us. We might get tired. We might not be taught. We might not be able to work the next day. I don't care. We're going to do this walk today. You're going to go, well, I just said we're going to do a walk. It's not sinful to go on a walk, but there might be other times. We've been working a lot this week. Do you think you all can do it? I'd like to take a long walk. What do you think? You're going to be up for? I just feel utterly exhausted. I feel like I'm going to get sick. Okay, not a problem. Let's not take the walk today. See, there's a difference. Sometimes you might just get a command. Well, I'm going to obey it. Why? Because it gives glory and honor to God. Other time, I'll be dealing with just talking about here. Other time, we might sit down, talk about it, make a mutual decision. Great. But that has to do with the one in charge. He can decide when it's time to have a mutual decision and when not to. It's a good thing to be that way. It means you're conciliar. We don't like that word nowadays, but that's what it means, is that to be able to see the other people in the household. We want people to be happy. We want there to be peace. We want to work together to find a good way to move forward and do stuff. Okay, let me read this other question here too, because it does have stuff in there. I know it's taken up a lot of time. It is. I'm sorry for those people. Christ gave himself for the church, Ephesians 5:25. And so also the husband has the duty of providing for his wife spiritually and temporally. Usually the man should attend to the external affairs of the family, such as its support and protection. Now understand what I've just said. While the wife should take care of the internal affairs, such as the housekeeping and the training of the children. It is to be regretted that the smallness of the husband's salary often compels the wife to work outside the home. It's regretted, but that doesn't mean the husband has a duty to make all the money. He should, but if he's not able to do it because of his job or because of the other circumstance, because of whatever's going on, and you don't, there's not, and it's possible to do, the wife has to go out and help too. That's a question I've gotten more recently. That isn't against, that's not against marriage. It's the woman's there to be a help. And if we have to, if it takes two people to make the finances work, then it takes two people. It's to be regretted, but that's just what it takes. The woman, the only guideline it gives us in this is the woman should not be compelled to take up occupations unsuited to her sex. Okay? Maybe she doesn't go and run the pump truck for the concrete company. Come back full. I mean, that's hard work. You're running this hose around the whole, not good work. That's not good work for a woman. Okay. But a lot of times, education works out very well. Secretarial work works out very well. These are things that women oftentimes excel in. Men do too, but women also excel in them very much so. And it's not they're oftentimes too, if there happen to be kids that are a little bit older, they can even go and visit there. Sometimes they're able to. Anyways, you all know this stuff better than I do. Injury done the common personal goods of husband and wife by one of them is unjust. So somebody taking something, and let's just say the wife or the husband doesn't like something and it's mutual, just takes it, or belongs to the husband or belongs to the wife and just doesn't want it there anymore. So they take it and they smash it, they throw it away and they say, oh yeah, I just got rid of that. Or has something that you own, yeah, I just got rid of that. Or I sold that, or whatever else it might be. Very grave. Very, very grave. That has to be taken, if it's in common, it has to be taken to the head of the family and asked, do we get rid of this? Do we not get rid of this? Unless the head of the family is saying, I want you to take care of these things. I don't really care how you do it. Take care of it. There you go. Your job's to take care of it. He trusts you to do it. You go take care of it. In the friary, they'll come to me sometimes about a toothbrush. I don't like that, but it's a virtuous thing because they're staying very humble, and the fact they're not presuming to take stuff. We try to live in the friary as though we're in someone else's house for like a day or two. You ask for everything. You don't ever show up and say, you just start walking around like digging in their closets and start taking stuff to wear, because you might need something, but you'd go to them and ask and say, I could use another blanket. There's not one in here. Would I be able to do? That's what we would do in someone's house. Well, St. Francis says we're to live as pilgrims and strangers in the friary. And so we ask for these things. We don't just live there like we have dominance. And this is what's happening in a lot of families. There's just dominance. You just presume I can do whatever I want. I live here, whatever else. Just let them know later on, I did these things, okay? And then what's the husband going to say? Okay, I don't know what else to say about it. I did it anyways. So the family goods are not usually in control. The family goods are usually under the control of the head of the family. The wife has no right to use the earnings of her husband without his consent, unless he fails to provide suitably for his family. This has to be understood, though. Or uses his money extravagantly. This has to be understood, though. You can't just say, okay, I don't think you use your money right. I think you use it extravagantly. Therefore, I can do these things. It doesn't work that way. So if you have a husband that is taking, you have this much money, and he's going to take all of that and gamble it. But you're not going to get the bills paid because the husband's going to take that money. He's going to gamble that money. It's permissible for the wife to start taking money from there for the provisions of the family. Not only is it permissible, it's necessary to do. The family has to be taken care of. But she still has to do this in a way that's very respectful. It means you just discreet is what a better word to say would be, out of discretion. Not out of this animosity, out of this hatred. This is what you start seeing in marriage. it's unbearable to see. You can see this beautiful wife going and trying to humbly provide for the family while not casting too much of a shadow on the husband who's falling into a very grave or culpable error, but he's weak and he's hurt and he's doing whatever, just like you might fall into that, and he might have to do the same thing for you. So we have to think about it in this Christian kind of format.
𝐓𝐡𝐢𝐫𝐝